Amara walked into the tall glass building of Nurutech Industry, her heels clicking across the marble floor like they always did every Monday morning. Lagos traffic had been brutal, but she still arrived early, as usual. She'd worked here for 8 years, built her name from the ground up, and everyone knew she got things done. But today felt strange. Whispers floated around the lobby, soft, nervous tone. "The new CEO starts today," someone said. "He came from South Africa, big reputation." Amara smoothed her blazer and took a deep breath. She'd seen plenty of leadership changes before. As long as she kept her head down and her numbers up, she'd be fine. Or so she thought. When she was called into the top-floor boardroom, she expected a quick introduction. Instead, she found a tall man with sharp eyes behind the CEO's desk. Mr. Kadom didn't even smile. "You've been here too long, Amara," he said flatly. "New direction means new people." Her heart stopped for a second. "Sir, with respect," she began, trying to steady her voice. "Security will escort you out." The words hit like a slap. Around her, no one moved. The HR rep looked down at her papers, pretending not to hear. 2 guards appeared at the door. Amara stood frozen, her mind racing. 8 years of loyalty, gone in a minute. No warning, no reason, just humiliation. As she walked out, the whispers followed her again. This time quieter. Amara's hands trembled as she packed her things into a small brown box. Her coffee mug, her notebook, the framed photo of her old team from their first big project. The office that had once felt like home suddenly felt like a stranger's space. Her co-workers stayed glued to their screens, pretending to be busy. No one dared to meet her eyes. The silence was louder than any words. Only one person moved toward her, a young woman with kind eyes and a neat ponytail. Tessa, the new CEO's secretary. She hesitated for a second, then whispered, "I'm so sorry, Amara. I didn't know this would happen." Amara forced a small smile, the kind you wear when your heart is breaking, but you refuse to let anyone see it. "It's fine," she said softly, though it wasn't. She lifted the box and walked toward the elevator, her heels echoing across the room. No one said goodbye. When the elevator doors opened to the ground floor, the humid Lagos air hit her face. She stepped outside and stood there for a moment, clutching her box like it was the only thing holding her together. The city buzzed around her, honking cars, street vendors shouting, life moving on without her. 8 years. 8 years of long nights, early mornings, and endless deadlines, gone in 8 minutes. By the time she reached her small apartment in Yaba, the shock had started to fade, replaced by a dull ache. She set the box on her kitchen table and sank into a chair. The silence of her home felt heavier than the one in the office. She stared at the wall, hearing Kato's voice again and again. New direction means new people. She whispered the words under her breath, almost mocking them. New direction, she said. But what did that even mean? Amara had built that department from scratch. She trained half the team, managed the biggest accounts, and handled crises no one else could. If anyone deserved to stay, it was her. So why her? She picked up her phone, scrolling through old emails, old reports, proof of her work, her late nights, her dedication. Nothing made sense. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not tonight. She looked at the city lights flickering outside her window and took a deep breath. Maybe this was the end of one chapter, she thought. Or maybe, just maybe, something else was hiding beneath the surface. Either way, she wasn't done yet. The next morning, Amara woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. At first, she thought it was another flood of sympathy messages from coworkers too afraid to speak yesterday. But when she opened Twitter, her stomach dropped. Trending at the top of Lagos news. Nurutech's new CEO begins with mass firing. Her name wasn't in the headline, but it didn't need to be. People in the comments already knew. Some defended her, others speculated. She was one of the best. 8 years? That's cold. But then one comment stopped her cold. Someone wanted her out of the way. Heard she was close to landing a huge government contract. Amara blinked at the words. Her heart started racing. Government contract? That was her project. Months of work, meetings, and research. She'd been negotiating it quietly, waiting for approval. Only a few people even knew about it. She read the comment again, slower this time. The dots started to connect. The new direction, excuse didn't make sense anymore. This wasn't random. Someone had taken her out, and maybe taken her work too. Her mind spun as she grabbed her laptop and opened her files. The proposal was gone. Deleted. She checked her backup drive, empty. Her breath caught in her throat. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, back at Nurutech, Tessa was sitting at her desk outside Kadom's office, typing notes from his morning meeting. He was on a call, pacing the room like he owned the world. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but his voice was loud, confident, almost arrogant. "Yeah," he said, chuckling. "I got her file. The government deal is ours now. She won't know what hit her." Tessa froze. Her fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. For a second, she thought she misheard him. But then he laughed again, that same smug tone, and added, "She was good, but not smart enough to protect herself." Her stomach twisted. She glanced at the closed door, her mind racing. Amara's face flashed in her head, that forced smile yesterday, holding back tears as she walked out. Tessa's heart sank. This wasn't new direction. It was theft. She looked down at her hands, suddenly shaking. Working under a new boss was one thing, but hearing this, it crossed a line. Kado's voice dropped lower now, serious. "Once the board approves the deal, we'll move fast. No one needs to know whose idea it really was." Tessa clenched her jaw, anger mixing with fear. She'd seen shady things in the corporate world before, but this felt different, cruel, calculated. When Kado finally ended the call, she stared at the screen in front of her, pretending to type. But in her mind, a decision was forming. Someone had to stop him. Tessa sat at her desk that afternoon, pretending to type reports while her mind raced. She couldn't stop hearing Kado's voice from earlier. "I got her file. The deal is ours now." Each word replayed in her head like a warning she couldn't ignore. She wasn't just a secretary. She'd been with Nurutech for 5 years. Long before Kado walked through the doors with his polished shoes and fake smile. She'd worked under leaders who cared about people, who built teams that felt like family. But this man, he was different. Cold, arrogant, dangerous. All morning, she debated whether to confront him. Part of her wanted to storm into his office and call him out right then. But another part of her knew better. Kado had power, and people like him didn't fall easily. If she accused him without proof, she'd be the next one escorted out by security. At lunch, she walked past Amara's old desk. The chair sat empty, her nameplate still there, the plant she left behind already wilting. Guilt hit Tessa hard. She thought about Amara's face yesterday, calm on the outside, broken on the inside. Tessa had done nothing then, but she couldn't stay quiet now. That night, long after everyone had gone home, she returned to the office. The building was dark except for the faint glow of security lights. Her heart pounded as she swiped her access card and slipped into Kado's office. The air smelled of his cologne and fresh coffee. She opened drawers carefully, flipping through folders and files. Most were locked, but she found a spare key taped under his desk, typical corporate arrogance. Inside the top drawer, she spotted a folder marked government contract. Her hands shook as she opened it. There it was, Amara's proposal. Every page, every chart, every word written in her voice. The last page stopped her cold, a signature. Amara's name had been replaced with Kado's. The date showed it was submitted weeks before he even became CEO. He hadn't just taken credit, he'd stolen everything. Tessa stood there for a long moment, staring at the papers, feeling her anger rise. She grabbed her phone and took photos of every page, making sure the timestamps were clear. Then she carefully put the file back exactly as she found it. As she turned to leave, she paused by the window. From up here, the city lights of Lagos shimmered in the distance. Somewhere out there, Amara was sitting in her apartment, probably wondering why this happened to her. Tessa took a deep breath and whispered to herself, not for long. She knew what she had to do now, and once the truth came out, Kadom Beale wouldn't know what hit him. The next morning, Kadom Beale walked into his office like he owned the world, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, humming to himself. The company was already buzzing about his bold new leadership. He smirked at the thought. Everything was going according to plan. But before he could sit down, the door flew open with a loud bang. The sound made him jump. Tessa stood there, face pale but eyes blazing. She wasn't the quiet, polite secretary he was used to. She was shaking, not from fear but from anger. "You fired the wrong woman," she shouted, her voice echoing through the glass wall. Kado frowned, confused for a second before smirking. "Excuse me?" Tessa stepped forward and threw a folder onto his desk. Papers scattered everywhere. "You stole Amara's project. I found the proof. Her proposal, her signature, everything, and your name pasted over it." He laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Careful, Tessa. That's a big accusation to make against your boss." She glared at him. "It's not an accusation if it's true." For a moment, the room went silent. Kado leaned back in his chair, his expression changing. The arrogance in his eyes turned sharp. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said slowly. "I could end your career before lunch." Tessa crossed her arms. "Then I guess you'd better hurry. You don't have much time left." She turned and headed for the door. Kado stood, slamming his hand on the desk. "You'll regret this," but she didn't stop. "Maybe," she said over her shoulder, "but not as much as you will." The door closed behind her with a satisfying click. Kado looked down at the folder, flipping through the pages with growing panic. Every document was there, Amara's research, her proposal drafts, even her digital timestamp. He muttered a curse under his breath and reached for his phone. What he didn't know was that while he was staring at the paper proof, a far more dangerous version was already in motion. Earlier that morning, Tessa had emailed everything. Every screenshot, every signature, every photo, to the company board and the legal department. She'd copied the chairman, Mrs. Adewale, directly. As Kadom paced his office, trying to figure out his next move, the first notification popped up on his computer. A message from the board. Emergency meeting scheduled. Attendance required. He froze. His stomach twisted. Outside, Tessa walked back to her desk, heart pounding but lighter than it had felt in days. She didn't smile, but a quiet sense of victory filled her chest. Amara's truth was finally on its way out. Kadom just didn't know yet. His downfall had already begun. Amara was sitting at her small kitchen table, staring at her laptop, but not really seeing the screen. It had been a week since she was fired, and though the sting had dulled a bit, the confusion hadn't. She kept wondering what she did wrong, what new direction really meant. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. The number flashing on the screen was unknown. She hesitated for a second before opening the message. "Check your email," from Tessa. Her heart skipped. Tessa, the CEO's new secretary? The same woman who had whispered, "I'm sorry," as she was being escorted out? Amara opened her email, and what she saw made her gasp. Her inbox was filled with attachments, screenshots, scanned documents, and PDFs. The first file she opened stopped her cold. It was her project, the government contract proposal she had worked on for months. Every page looked familiar, except for one thing. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers. It was Kado's. She scrolled through more files, timelines, submission records, and even a copy of an internal email from Kadom boasting about securing the deal. It was undeniable proof that he had stolen her work. Her hands started to shake as she clicked on Tessa's message at the top. "You deserve justice. Do what you must." Amara covered her mouth, trying to steady her breathing. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at the evidence, feeling a mix of shock, anger, and something else, relief. Someone inside Nurutech had risked everything to help her. Her first instinct was rage. She wanted to post everything online, to tell the whole world what had happened. But after a few deep breaths, the professional side of her took over. No, this needed to be done right. Quietly, smartly. She opened a new email and began typing, her fingers steady now. The subject line read, "For your immediate attention." She attached the evidence and wrote a short, calm message to her lawyer and the company's board chair, Mrs. Adewale. "I believe you'll want to review this before it becomes public." That was all she needed to say. She didn't threaten, didn't rant, didn't beg. She just sent the truth. After pressing send, Amara leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. The weight that had been sitting on her chest since that humiliating morning finally began to lift. For the first time in days, she smiled, not because she'd won, but because she finally had power again. The truth was out there now, and there was no taking it back. Somewhere in the city, Tessa was probably waiting nervously, hoping Amara got her message. Amara looked at her phone again and whispered, "Thank you." Then she sat back, waiting for the storm she knew was coming. 2 days later, Nurutech's boardroom was filled with tension so thick you could almost feel it in the air. The long glass table gleamed under the ceiling lights, and the board members sat quietly, their faces serious. An emergency meeting had been called. No one knew all the details, but everyone could sense something big was about to happen. Kadom Beale walked in with his usual confidence, dressed in a crisp gray suit and holding a cup of coffee like he had nothing to fear. He smiled at the board members and said, "Good morning, everyone. I assume this is about the government contract. Great news, by the way." Then he froze. His eyes landed on someone sitting at the far end of the table. Amara, calm, poised, dressed in a navy suit, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. His smile faltered. "What's she doing here?" he demanded, looking at Mrs. Adewale, the board chair. Mrs. Adewale's face was hard, her voice cold. "You'll see." Amara didn't look at him. She simply reached into her bag, took out her phone, and pressed play. The sound filled the room, Kato's voice, loud and proud, bragging on the phone. "Yeah, I got her file. The government deal is ours now. She won't know what hit her." The room went completely silent. Every eye turned to Kadom. His confidence evaporated in an instant. He started to stammer. That recording, it's taken out of context." But no one believed him. The documents, the emails, the timestamps, everything was already in the board's hand. The proof was undeniable. Mrs. Adewale leaned forward and said quietly, "Mr. Mbeal, this company values integrity above all else. You've embarrassed us. You've lied to us. And worst of all, you've stolen from one of your own employees." Kato's face turned pale. "I can fix this," he said quickly, his tone desperate now. "We can spin the story, say it was a misunderstanding." But she shook her head. "There will be no spin. The vote is final." Within minutes, the board voted unanimously to terminate his contract, effective immediately. Security was already waiting outside the door. Kadom stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. As the guard stepped in, Amara finally stood up. She didn't shout, didn't gloat. She just looked him in the eye, her voice calm and steady. New direction, right? You were right about that. Then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking softly against the floor. The boardroom stayed silent for a moment before Mrs. Adewale said, "Let's move forward. The company has real work to do." Outside the glass doors, Amara took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, she felt free, not just from humiliation, but from injustice. The truth had done its job. A week later, the energy inside Nurutech felt completely different. The same glass building that once carried tension and fear now buzzed with excitement and curiosity. Employees whispered in hallways, but this time, their whispers carried hope. Something big was happening. That morning, the official company memo went out. Amara Okoye reinstated, promoted to acting CEO. When Amara walked through the lobby, people actually stopped what they were doing. Some clapped quietly, others just smiled with relief. The woman who had been escorted out in shame was now returning as the leader of the entire company. She wore a simple white blouse and black slacks, her confidence steady but calm. Tessa walked beside her, no longer just the CEO's secretary, now Amara's executive assistant. The two exchanged a small, knowing smile as they entered the executive floor. Inside her new office, the same one Kadom had once ruled from, Amara paused for a moment, taking it all in. The view of Lagos stretched wide through the glass windows. She placed a small photo of her old team on the desk and said softly, "Let's do this right." Her first decision as acting CEO came that same day. She called a company-wide meeting and stood before hundreds of employees, her voice clear and warm. "No one should ever lose what they built because of someone else's greed," she said. "From today, every employee's ideas, research, and projects will be protected under a new policy, one that ensures credit always goes where it's due." The room erupted in applause. Some people even teared up. For the first time in months, Nurutech's staff felt safe again, seen and valued. Amara worked long hours that week, rebuilding trust, meeting department heads, and reviewing projects that had been buried under Kado's leadership. Tessa was always close by, organized and calm, handling calls and quietly making sure Amara ate lunch, something the old CEO never cared to do. Behind the scenes, news about Kadom spread fast. The board had reported his actions to the authorities, and an official investigation was underway for corporate fraud and document forgery. His fall from power was swift, and the story made national headlines. But Amara didn't focus on that. Her goal wasn't revenge, it was rebuilding. Under her leadership, Nurutech began turning into the kind of company she had always dreamed of working for, one built on integrity and collaboration. Late one evening, as most employees left for the day, Amara stood by her office window with Tessa beside her. The city lights shimmered far below. Tessa smiled. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Amara nodded. "It feels right." The woman who had once been thrown out without warning was now the one setting the direction for everyone else. And this time, it truly was a new beginning. The morning sun spilled through the wide windows of Nurutech's new conference hall, where banners read, "Digital learning for every child." The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as government officials, tech leaders, and reporters filled the room. After months of hard work, Amara's government project, the same one that nearly cost her everything, was finally launching. The program would bring digital learning tools to schools in rural parts of Nigeria, providing tablets, offline education platforms, and training for teachers. It wasn't just a contract. It was a mission to bridge the gap between technology and education for thousands of children who'd never had access before. As Amara stood on stage, she looked out over the crowd and couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. She remembered the day she was escorted out of this same building, her box of belongings in hand, her career seemingly over. Now here she was launching the very project that had been stolen from her. Reporters crowded near the stage after the presentation, eager to ask questions. One of them, a young woman holding a recorder, smiled and asked, "Ms. Okoye, your story has inspired so many people. You were fired, humiliated, and yet you came back to save the very company that let you go. What kept you going through it all?" Amara paused for a moment, her expression softening. She thought about those long nights in her small Yabo apartment, the sting of betrayal, and the quiet strength it took to keep believing in herself. Then she smiled gently and said, "Sometimes being pushed out is just the universe clearing your path." The crowd murmured in appreciation. It wasn't a dramatic answer. It was simple, honest, and real. Cameras flashed as she spoke about the importance of integrity and resilience, not just in business but in life. As the press conference wrapped up, Amara stepped down from the stage, her team surrounding her with congratulations. Tessa was waiting nearby, beaming with pride. When their eyes met, Amara gave her a small nod, a silent thank you that said everything words couldn't. Tessa grinned and winked. "Told you justice would find its way," she whispered. Amara laughed quietly, shaking her head. You were the spark, she said. Outside, the city of Lagos buzzed with life. Billboards displayed headlines. The CEO who was fired, then saved the company. Her story was everywhere, not because she sought fame, but because it reminded people that honesty and perseverance still mattered. As she looked out the car window later that evening, watching the busy streets fly by, Amara felt peaceful. Life had come full circle. The pain, the loss, the humiliation, all of it had led her right here. And deep down, she knew one thing for sure: being pushed out hadn't ended her story. It had simply cleared the way for her to write a better one. Morning sunlight poured into Amara's office, filling the space with a soft golden glow. The same office that once belonged to Kadom now felt completely different, brighter, lighter, alive. Her desk was organized neatly, papers stacked, fresh flowers in a vase by the window. She stood by the glass, looking out at the city of Lagos bustling below, a quiet smile on her face. On the corner of her desk sat a framed photo of her old team, the people who had believed in her long before any title or power. She picked it up, tracing her finger over the glass, remembering the laughter, the late nights, the shared dreams. So much had changed, but deep down, she was still the same woman who believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost her everything. She whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. We rise, not when we fight for revenge, but when we stand for what's right. Her words hung in the air for a moment, calm and certain. That was the lesson she had learned the hard way. Real success wasn't about proving others wrong, but about staying true to yourself no matter what. Just then, her phone buzzed. Her assistant poked her head through the door. Ma'am, a company from Ghana just called. They want to discuss a new partnership. Amara smiled, setting the photo back on her desk. Tell them I'll call back, she said gently, glancing around her office once more. I'm busy building something worth keeping. As the door closed, she turned back to the window, the sunlight catching her face. It wasn't just another day at work. It was a new beginning, one built on truth, courage, and the kind of strength no one could ever take away again.